Hey everyone, let me get our faces on here. Hey, welcome back. Another crazy shift show. We got to be careful each time we say that. Looking forward to today, a little bit of a crazy day. This is my production week. We've had multiple live streams and podcasts, but really excited about today. We got first one up is Chuck Coker here. Dr. Coker, friend of mine for almost 25 years, almost too long. We don't want to. It's been a great run, but it's been a long time as well. So a couple more gray hairs that we've had, or less hair than we used to have. And then after this afternoon, I've got a great panel. We're going to be talking about leadership, continuing talk about leadership, future of work, and especially what the workplace is going to look like coming back. And I've got Lee Andress is going to be on from Academe. I've got Lance Hahn from ERE and Talent. He's the new editor over there. And then we have Mike Clark from Gallup. And so it should be, we'll have a great conversation. But this morning we're going to talk, I'm going to be talking about Chuck, about trust and leadership, and a lot of new exciting things going on there. Before we jump into that, I'm just going to put up this for those of you who are not members yet. Googleization Nation, you can go up there. It's free. It's our community. We've got about 1,000 members, almost doubled it in the last couple of weeks, and it's a way to keep you updated about the podcasts and live streams and interviews and articles and new courses. And we plan to add some summits and webinars and also over the next few months. So it's a really good opportunity to be able to do that. What else? I think that's about it. So let me go back and uncover that. And to get the Googleization Nation, just go Googleizationnation.com. It's free. Chuck, good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Excellent.
Yeah. Hey, just for anybody who's on the call, but everybody who's on the call, if you want to in the comments sections. By the way, if you see me looking over here at a couple different tablets, I got 4 screens up here. In order to check any activity on LinkedIn, I actually need to look at another device. Plus, I got 3 other screens that are up. But if you comment in LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, the comments will show up on our screen, and we'll be able to do that. But let us know where you're calling from, where you're located, how you're doing today, and certainly if you have any questions or comments, let us know. Please also like our comments and share the conversation with everybody. Appreciate it. So Chuck, I'm going to let you do a little bit of a background. As I said, we met in January of 1997, so not quite 25 years yet. Yeah, out in Arizona at a conference. But why don't you give a little bit of background in yourself? You got your hands in a couple different pots.
Oh goodness, Ira. My background is in sales and marketing, and then I moved into executive management with a company called Balfour. And after a number of years as vice president of sales and marketing there, we did such a good job. We turned around the company from about 10 million a year on losses to profitable in 3.5 years. And we did that by founding what was called the Balfour Motivational Research Institute. That institute helped us measure the motivations of employees, what causes an employee to succeed or fail, and what kind of rewards and awards system would actually incentivize them towards success. So with that tool, we were able to to reach audiences in a different way when it came to the consulting process of building motivation into employee incentive programs. We did so well. After 3 years and the company began profitable, they broke it up and sold it off. So at that point, it was the typical aspect of now I've been doing this for a while. So I started my own consulting service, and so since 1993. You and I have been doing basically the same thing, helping organizations develop and mature during the hiring, training and development, and the retention aspects of an employee's life cycle.
Right. So, and when you and I met, I mean, we were both using DISC, the DISC profile, which we knew, and then right around then was when the values profile was introduced. Which we use different versions of it, but the business motivators, where it looks at, are people motivated by, learning, aesthetics, money, power, community, and some doctrine or tradition. And so for anybody who's interested in that, you can contact either one of us, but, happy to share that information. I wrote a book I can't believe it, it's 2004. I wrote Understanding Business Values and Motivators, and so it's still available. I need to update it. Some of the references are that we talked about. We tried to identify people that had certain values, but names like Ted Koppel probably don't ring a bell with with the millennials and definitely with Gen Z. So time to kind of update that. And I know, but you introduced me to the quality of motivation. And it really changed my life on how I looked at behaviors, motivation. It helped me change how I look at assessments. There still hasn't been like a single assessment that answered that's the holy grail. That was like the missing piece. But again, we won't go into all the details of it, but it's been challenging. Now we're working on, hopefully we can work on an update to make that available. But anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more about quality and motivation, you can check with Chuck or myself. Chuck had certified me years ago, and still got that. So that's good. But you have been working on a couple new things, and that's what I want to talk about today.
Right.
Especially with the one in particular. I know you're working on a leadership program, which you could give us a little bit of background on that. But particularly this trust profile. And let me just pull up, because you provided me a slide, and we want to get some background on there. But why don't you? I guess what prompted it? Let's kind of take it step by step. What was your reason? What was the initiative for you to develop a trust profile? Because there's hundreds of thousands of profiles, it seems, out there, especially on the internet. What was missing? Why did you feel that we needed one more tool? And why did you choose trust?
Well, Ira, over the years, you and I both been in consulting long enough to know that we try to solve organizations' problems and challenges through understanding data. Data gives us that shortcut to get to where the real problem exists. And Ira can tell you from experience, we can assess the top leaders of a company and without ever walking in the door, tell them what their issues are. And so one of the biggest issues that I experience in virtually every company that I've consulted with, and since 1993, we're talking about hundreds, was trust. Everybody had someone in the organization that was problematic in this area or that generated distrust and even had an impact on employee engagement or corporate wellness. So what I did was I began reading articles, and when I got over 100, I knew that these were all people's opinions. And so I went out to several of the universities. I didn't mention it earlier, but was department head for 7 years at Westminster in the United Kingdom, and have taught at multiple universities here in the United States. But what I did was I researched the most current doctoral theses on trust and tried to identify the components. And of the 108 articles and the 8 doctoral theses that I read and proofed, there were 5 common elements in all of them. And so when I identified those common elements, then of course the process began for identifying valid questions, both transparent and non-transparent questions, to make sure that we were getting factual information. And so a little over a year ago, we put that up on the website, and it's just kind of blown up, because no organization I've worked with doesn't have trust issues if they've got more than 3 or 4 people.
And especially now, I mean, and again, there's always been a bit of a leadership crisis in different areas, and there's certainly been, exceptional leaders, and then the ones that we read about in the media, the problem. But if you look at the Gallup the Gallup survey that's been out with engagement, and we're only 30% of the U.S. population, and it's pretty universal, pretty worldwide, but 30% were actively engaged, and 70% were somewhat or not engaged at all. Part of that, it wasn't exclusively that it had to do with trust, but a lot of that had to do with trust. That people, for years, they've been talking about that relationships, retention, loyalty, motivations, engagement had to do with the direct supervisor. And so we're not only talking about trust in corporate or trust in management, but we're talking about even at the supervisor level, is that sometimes people didn't trust them. And it doesn't mean that they thought they were doing things illegally, but they might not have trusted that they did things in their best interest, or that they were their advocate. So there's a million reasons why, but you broke it down, and you found that there were 5 areas. So, you got this big area of trust, and you identified that there were 5 aspects or 5 identifiable areas that that you were able to isolate, and again be able to focus on those, because how do we change that? It's not only a matter of saying, hey, do you trust me? But if you don't, is what can I do about it? Where am I failing? Because maybe I'm really transparent, I'm candid, but maybe there's another area. So let me put the slide up here, and let's go around the circle here. We'll go up there. So these were the 5 areas. So why don't you walk through, and I mentioned transparency already, so that's a good place to start. But why don't you kind of walk through each of these, what these mean, and how you identified them?
Well, the first thing was to identify areas that are critical to the whole concept of trust. The first thing is there has to be interpersonal skills at a high level for another person to trust you. Second, there had to be an intrapersonal skill set within the individual that allowed them to become trustworthy. The next thing that we had to see was, okay, what is the person doing with trust to put things into action, to actually make a person trustworthy? So with those 3 subdivisions, we identified the core competencies, or the constructs, shall we say, of trust, that are transparency and relatability, which is the interpersonal parts; the predictability, which is the intrapersonal part, so that people see the same person each day. And how do we put trust into action? Well, first of all, if the information is not feasible, nobody's going to trust you. And if you don't empower people to take that ball and run with it, they're not going to trust you. So the transparency was key. People have to be able to relate to you interpersonally. And If they don't think that you are truthful with them, you're not going to be trustworthy. Second thing is they have to see you not so much as purely a leader, but someone that they can relate to. And if they don't see that ability to relate to you, the trust goes away. So those interpersonal skills, while they may seem somewhat similar, they're definitely very different. Transparency is, am I being truthful? And am I sharing what the real issue is? And second of all, is can I relate to you as a person? The intrapersonal aspect of predictability, people want to know that from when they interact with you, they know what they're getting. That makes us trustworthy. Are they going to meet the same person day in, day out? Mm-hmm. Are they going to meet somebody from left field one day and right field the next day? But when we get to the actionable aspects of trust, that feasibility, have I done my homework? Have I done the things that are necessary so that when you make a commitment to help me on a project or you become involved, I'm not going to be embarrassed because you do something stupid. And empowerment, any employee that is engaged with an organization is empowered to do their job and take the information, that feasible information, and put it into action. You know, you mentioned earlier about engagement, Ira. You know, 30% in the US, 28%. It's even worse in Western Europe. And the one thing that is common to disengage employees is a lack of trust. And whether the individual can actually relate to the mission, vision, and values, or is the company truly enabling and facilitating the mission, vision, and values, or is it all just for the website and for the client base? So trust digs down into all of those levels.
So, and again, you know, we talked about before that there was an issue of trust, and again, there were certainly people that got it, they understood it, they have strong values, they walk the talk, they were able to build great organizations, but there was a whole other subset, there was a whole other group of people that didn't, and then a lot of the people, you know, we have the baby boomers like us that are phasing out. You know, eventually we're stepping aside, and then there's a whole new generation. So just because people trusted me or management or the organization before doesn't mean it's not something you can just give to somebody.
That's right.
They have to build it individually. And then there's new people coming in the organization. So it's more dynamic. It's not the same people, you know, if we roll a clock back 40 or 50 years when we were growing up, you know, people, I know there were factories, you know, again, when we were in an industrial age, but there were factories and they had 2 or 3 or 4 generations that would work in the same place. The grandfather worked, and then the father worked, and then the son worked, and now his son worked, or daughters eventually. But that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, and now not only you know, many of the businesses don't exist that long. Certainly we're much more mobile. We don't live in the same hometown that we grew up in. And so all that's changed. So every time that there's a change in person or both internally or externally, the environment changes, the competition changes. We have to build trust. So we're sitting now in the pandemic. Hopefully we'll be post-pandemic. You know, within the next few weeks. I know you're in Florida, so you're one of those early states. A couple of weeks we'll be reopening, but within an organization, there's a crisis because we're not getting consistent news. We're not getting consistent leadership from the government. Again, we've got governors that are good. We've got you know, and it depends. I don't want to get into the politics of this, but there's some people that trust. our government leadership, and there's some that don't. We're getting conflicting information between our administrations and science. And then we have people that believe that. But the one thing that's been pretty constant is that when people went to work, they knew that they had a job. Now they don't know if they have a job or not. Do they trust their leadership to be able to turn this around? They're looking for advice. So this afternoon, we're going to be talking about some of the policies and some of the things that are going on. But when I show up for work, is it going to be full time? Do I trust that it's safe? Is it secure? Will there be business? Will I continue to get a paycheck? What happened to the promotions you promised me? What happens to my benefits? Most people, I think, are going to accept that things will change. We're not going back to normal. We're going to live in an age of uncertainty for quite a while. But the constant is to have someone that says, I know they've got my back. I know if they say I'm not sure, it's not because they got bad news and they're afraid to deliver it. It's that it's beyond the transparency, though. Again, is even what people are conveying. You call feasibility. Is it realistic? Is it relevant? And there's so many, and day by day things change on the outside. So I think your timing for this was brilliant. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if you anticipated this one, because I know you've been working on it for a long time. But to have a trust profile or a trust questionnaire now is pretty brilliant, because again, I think it could be used culturally. Certainly the people trust management, and I guess most importantly is. It's not only having an assessment, but then what's next? So let me ask you. So if I find that I'm not my transparency score is not very good, or my empowerment score is not very good, what could somebody do about it? And before I go there, I'm going to put this across the bottom of the screen while you're talking. I want to let everybody know that it won't be this way forever. But right now, Chuck's offered this for free. Again, we're collecting data and revalidating and get more norms. So, we don't know what will happen in the future. But if you basically can go up to my website, Success Performance Solutions, and you can either just search for it or take this link, and you'll get basically, we're just asking for a name and an email. And then immediately you'll be taken to a link, and you can complete that. And then that report will be delivered to you, thanks to Chuck. So it takes, about 10 minutes? It's about 10 minutes.
It's not much longer than that.
It might even be less. Yeah, I know it was pretty quick when I took it.
Exactly. Ira, you mentioned something extremely important, and that is the fact that each person is going to have natural characteristics that build aspects of trust. But each person is also going to have aspects of their personality that's going to be troublesome to get people to trust them. And this is why, decades ago, you and I worked for the Center for Family-Owned Business on a consulting basis. And we saw that 68% of the organizations failed from one generation to the next. And by the third generation, it was 92%, something like that.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah,
But the point was the personalities changed. And even though the organization was functioning, the different personalities brought in different levels of trust. And that's why they began to fail, because people get used to one level of leadership and trust. And then when something else happens, you don't know whether to trust or not. The good thing is that once we isolate or identify which of those 5 characteristics we're weak in, we now have a game plan. We now know where to work and how to work it. The person who is extremely interpersonal with their transparency and their relatability is probably going to be challenged in the feasibility area. or the predictability area. Why? Because they're outgoing, they're communicative, and they think in concepts rather than details. And that works against someone that is supposed to be predictable and provide feasible information. So then we have a track to run on. And once you know what the challenge is, it's much easier to work on, as you know.
So there's a lot of things you packed in there, but I wanted to share this comment from Lee. She's going to be on the panel this afternoon, so we'll probably be continuing this conversation. But basically, Chuck, you just nailed it with America's facing this moment, track or lack of it, and the authorities delivering critical information. So we shared that. So, again, Lee, thanks, Lee, for the comment, and we'll be talking to you soon, 1:30 this afternoon, right back here, same place. So, so there was quite a few things you said there, but one of the things I do want to be able to offer to people is, I know where one of the other thoughts, the relatability. How many people do you know that are fun to be around? I mean, you have a blast with them, but you don't trust them.
That's right.
So is that the real person, or that, hey, they're a lot of fun, but I know I got to be careful what I say, which means that they're not very transparent. And then you have other people that are transparent. They're very honest. You really enjoy them, but they don't empower other people to do anything. They don't allow it. It's all about them. Again, there's so many moving parts. So I think the different aspects that you're covering with trust is so important. But if again, going back to my question, if I find that I'm not as transparent as I should be, or I'm not empowering other people to do some of the things that they should be doing, what can someone do? I mean, how does this assessment help other than identifying you? What's next for them?
Well, the important thing is that once we get to that point, I have a developed process to help focus them on how to develop each one of these skills. And each one of these skills can be developed regardless of personality. You and I both know the genetic aspects or the behavioral aspects are defaults. But we can change our cultural mindsets, our priorities. And once we understand where the priorities or the mindsets or motivators or values, whatever you want to call them, then that is a matter of time and refocused attention. And in the emotional intelligence course that I've written, it's very focused. We've identified which capacities they have, and do they have the capacity to develop in that area. And if so, we structure them anywhere from 8 weeks to 24 weeks on developing that skill set.
And again, I think this goes back, and it's not a matter of saying, okay, here's an assessment. Oh, we identified now it's transparency as a weakness. So here's another assessment to take. I mean, but as we talk through these things, is transparency could be related to going back to a DISC profile. And again, for those who aren't familiar with DISC, it's DISC. It basically stands for if somebody's energized by being direct, energized by being interacting or influencing others, by a steady pace, and energized by complying with the rules set by other people. So it's a little bit about energy and motivation and behavior. It's also observable. So you've seen people that are highly animated. You've seen people that are straight-faced and straight-laced. So just think about different people that you know. Is the transparency may not be an intellectual or a mental or an attitude problem. It could be strictly your behavior, your hardwiring, because a high C, what we call somebody who's compliant or conscientious, is sort of they don't let their guard down very often. So they may be transparent. They're revealing everything about themselves, but to someone else, it's like, tough to read. And then there's other people that are overly transparent. They tell you anything that's on their mind at that moment. And again, that breaks down the trust, because then it's like, hey, they're so transparent that I don't know if I can trust them with this information, because they're likely to tell somebody else. So Lee actually, our buddy Lee, had a great question. Can you be both outgoing and transparent? I'm going to throw that to you. I've got my opinion on it, but
absolutely. Since we're talking about DISC, the high I person is normally going to be very transparent, and because they literally talk too much
and optimistic. Yeah, and they're also going to be. They happen to be the glasses always half full.
And so yes, they can be communicative, they can be transparent, and you got to remember too, the natural desire of a high I is personal approval from other people. And so they will want to be truthful unless they're trying to impress you, and then the fudge factor goes up. So what you mentioned earlier, though, Ira, was a good point. The difference between extroverts and introverts. Extroverts are normally going to be more transparent, but they're less predictable, and oftentimes their feasibility. And introverts are going to be more guarded, so they won't appear as transparent unless you have a relationship with them. If you have that relationship, then the transparency is not so much an issue, because they can address you because of the personal relationship.
So let me challenge you a little bit on that with the extroversion. So the stereotype of an extrovert is very friendly, very talkative, very loquacious, very outgoing, and they appear to be transparent. But there's a lot of extroverts who like being on the stage, and they're going to have this camouflage, and they're not going to reveal their true self with that, because just because you're an extrovert doesn't necessarily translate into transparency.
That's correct.
It may be easier to be transparent because you're able to share your feelings, but that doesn't mean extroverts don't hide their that some extroverts don't hide their feelings as well. Same as an introvert. I mean, the stereotype as an introvert is, oh, that's who we need to give this to. No, because some introverts, they may not do it vocally. They may not walk into a room of 500 people and shout at the top of their lungs, who they are and what's on their mind that day. But one-on-one, they may be or in smaller groups, they may be very comfortable sharing what their issues are. So this is the problem with all assessments, is people pull out one scale. They pull out something like extroverts and go, oh, we need an extrovert because they'd be good at sales. And you and I and most of the studies have realized that if you only hire extroverts, then only extroverts are good for sales. Except there's a lot of really, really good salespeople who happen to be introverts. They've just learned how to adapt. They've learned the skills. They've become more emotionally intelligent. They've grown and moved beyond that point. And that's what this is about. This is about, what do I need to work on? How do people perceive me? And then what do I need to work on? So you mentioned also emotional intelligence, which is probably taking DISC to the highest level, because DISC is primarily going to help you with self-awareness and self-management. But then it's, how do I recognize that in other people, and how do I manage those relationships with other people? So it seems like emotional intelligence, becoming more emotionally intelligent, is a solution for almost any of the gaps that you might find in the trust area.
Absolutely. And the good thing is emotional intelligence is something that can be improved. It's not like IQ. With appropriate focus and attention, emotional intelligence can be increased. And a lot of the companies that we've worked with, Ira, if you give us a year, we can hit anywhere between 9 and 11% increase in emotional intelligence.
Wow. So there's a couple of things, and again, I want to be able to wrap this up, and because I really, again, really thank everybody for carving out time, and everybody's schedules are crazy busy. I must have had 15 invitations today to join different sessions like this, and to watch, and summits and everything. So, the fact that we have, so many listeners on this right now is great. But I know you're working on a leadership course as well. And you're about halfway through, you're working through the workbooks. So why don't you share a little bit about that and where the trust profile fits in there?
Sure. So much of leadership has been taught in the past in the format of technical skills. And what I have found, just like we've discovered that EQ is more important than IQ, I have reformatted a leadership course that I built with some collaborative efforts 5 years ago into something that now helps a person understand what are the true things that you can instill within yourself that will not just build your leadership and management skills, but also build engagement and corporate wellness at the same time. So the first section is the foundations for success at the top, and you have to have an understanding of the difference between leadership and management. Because I don't care who you are, what role you're in, you are not a pure leader and you're not a pure manager. There are times when you're going to have to pivot back and forth, and it's very different skills that are required. So we get into the science of leadership and management, how to refine those skills, and then one of my favorite phrases of all times is clarity trumps persuasion. When a person understands clearly what's going on, you don't need to persuade them. The second section of the new leadership program is how do you bring people into a safe place to succeed? And that's where we talk about building trust, dealing with conflict, and using feedback to bring them into your little module to where they are solid.
Wow. How important is that right now with people coming back to work and being fearful? Perfect.
Critical. Then how do we take the skills that we've learned and transfer them to others, like integrity and charisma? Most people think that charisma you just inherit. But charisma, if you go back to the original Greek word that was translated into charisma, it means grace. Having the kind of grace that's necessary to work with people and build them up. And these transferring your skills to others shows them how to succeed in their career development process. And then section 4, building engagement and organizational wellness. How do you use collaboration and engagement to drive wellness? And then defining the true meaning of being at the top, and that is interactional leadership and management. No one has ever addressed this issue of how to make both management and leadership interactional in a way to where it brings about success, not just for the leader, but for the whole organization. So that is, shall we say, a snapshot of the course, Ira. But I'm looking forward in days ahead to where you and I can share this with others.
Yeah, and we talked, and obviously you have your you have your strategy to do that. We were talking right before we went on to do this interview about maybe putting it out as an online course or parts of it out as an online course, and be involved with that. So again, Chuck, I always love talking to you. We've done this for so many years. We used to have some pretty well. I always had late night conversations, but not with you, with Doc Martin, who was your mentor, in the quality of motivation. But it's always good to talk to you. And I think the trust profile is just perfect. Can't wait for the leadership program to come out. We'll do more of these sessions as you're going through that to let people know what's available. The best place to get hold of you, I guess, is your website. Is that would be there? So let me put that back up again at lifethrive.com. So you can just go to lifethrive.com. You'll get a hold of Chuck. He's also occasionally on LinkedIn, not too often, but up there. But you can reach him out there. But you can go to lifethrive.com and reach out. But make sure that you take us up on the opportunity to do the trust profile. And again, you can, I'll keep this up for just a few minutes while we go through some other things. And again, just a reminder, I'll be back at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time today. Let me go back and see if I can find the right slide there. There we go. We're going to be talking about HR and reimagining leadership in the future of work. And we'll see where that topic goes. And Lee, who had a couple of great comments here, talking about trust, I'm sure she'll bring that up, and we'll be talking with her. Lance Hahn, who is the new editor at ERE and Talent, very, very popular digital media, digital publication for recruitment and HR and talent acquisition. And then Mike Clark from Gallup, hopefully is going to be able to join us. I know he said earlier he might have a conflict, but hopefully we'll be able to work that around. And next week, we're going to continue on, let me see if I can get the right ones up here. On Monday, I've got Dorothy Dalton will be coming back. I don't remember the time, so I'll be sending out some memos. So go up to googlizationnation.com and you'll get a reminder. We're going to be talking about disrupting leadership for the new normal. So we'll continue on that theme. And then Tuesday, you don't want to miss this. I saw they just released the video yesterday, Humans at Work. I'm going to send you a link, Chuck, and we'll put this out there. What a powerful, I want to say it's a movie, but a powerful video. They actually recorded people who made these tough transformations in life, and incredible stories. There was one from England. It was a 911 caller, or from a call center, of walking somebody through. She was in the midst of a fire with her young child, and her stick-to-itiveness, the conversation, literally, the people were in tears watching this thing. And Elena was the inspiration behind this. She was the brains behind this. She works for Skill Scout, which is a technology company that works a lot of video. So very powerful. So we're going to be talking with Elena on Tuesday, and Dorothy on Monday, and then Lee and Lance and Mike this afternoon. So again, I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Chuck. Hopefully everybody continues to be safe and healthy, does their social distancing as we're trying to reopen America and reopen for business. So take care. We'll see you later this afternoon. Thanks.